Hello, it's me, Ingrid, again. Every time I say that, I'm so redundant. I need to say something else. But hello, it's me, Ingrid, again. Thank you so very much for joining me today. Today, I want to talk about emotions. Um, all of us are familiar with emotions, from anger to love to hate to disappointment to rejection, and the list goes on. If you go online and you look up emotions, you'll see a whole slew of emotions that pop up. What do I want to say about emotions today? I want to tell you that emotions are a distraction. Yes. Are you familiar with distraction? A distraction is something that takes you away from something else. You know, when you're attracted to each other, it comes together. When you're distracted, something is pulling you away from something else. It's a force, it's a little energy that comes in and tries to separate you from whatever it is that it wants to separate you from, or whatever it is you need to be separated from. So it could be good or it could be bad. But emotions are a distraction. You know, in my own personal life, I'm very emotional. There are times when I'm emotional and there are times when I'm not emotional. I've had clients who said, "Do you have any emotions at all?" But in a professional environment, of course, I'm not going to be like all emotion and crying and stuff. And then there are times when, you know, even in my with my children, I have been very focused, and therefore the emotion is contained in that context. So emotions for me is something that I'm familiar with. When I'm aware of my emotion, I deal with it. When I'm unaware of it, then I ask for feedback, or there are one or two people I'll call and say, "Hey, what do you think about this scenario?" And then they'll give me their perspective, and I take that perspective. I become introspective. I analyze it. Yeah, all that stuff. But you don't have to do all that. Emotions, like I said, are a distraction. That's what you need to remember. Why they're a distraction? Because a lot of times when you're crying, the tears are indicative of something greater. The tears are a symptom. It's like when you have the flu. When you have the flu, you may have a headache, or like the coronavirus, you may have body aches, you know, you may have diarrhea. They give you a whole list of symptoms that are synonymous with the ailment. It's no different with emotions. Emotions are symptomatic that something else is going on in your life. You know, when most people come to me and they're crying, I have tissues all over the office, and I'm like, you know what? You're going to buy those tissues back from Sam's Club because you're using way too many tissues. But people that cry a lot is, I found out, is because they don't know how to express what they're feeling. They're either so emotionally choked up with the emotions, or they're afraid to verbalize what they're really feeling internally. Think about this. How many people walk around angry, but they don't admit to anger? They're like, I'm cool, I'm chill, you know, I got this, don't worry about me. But how many people really are angry inside? Serial killers only manifest when the anger when the anger cannot be suffocated anymore or suppressed. Or people who are murderous, you know, in that moment, and we call it rage, when they lose all sense of control and they become enraged and they carry out all the suppressed emotions that they had inside at some point. But those are extreme cases. But for most of the population, emotions affect us on a daily basis. You know, I did a study, and it led me to the monastery and how monks live. And one of the things monks do, especially the Cathars, they spend a lot of time trying to disconnect from the world and the emotional baggage that the world brings, or the emotional upheaval that's associated with living in the world. And they were successful because without that emotional barrier or those emotional taunts, you're able to really focus and do what you need to do. Think about this. How many times have you been at work and somebody said something and it pissed you off, but you still got to continue working? Because most people are passive aggressive. Most people do not confront the issue there and then because, one, they don't want to lose their jobs, or two, they feel like, hey, if I lose my cool, then that person will know that I was affected. Me personally, I want them to know I was affected, but that's just me. But for you, think about this. You have suppressed so many emotions, whether it's at work or home, your wife or your husband says something to you, And hopefully you have a great relationship and is one where you guys can speak to each other honestly and the emotions flow and the emotions are dealt with on a daily basis. But most people don't have that luxury. Most people, it's like, think about a cut on your hand and think about putting a band-aid on that. And then think about putting another band-aid on top of that band-aid, and another band-aid on top of that band-aid, and another band-aid. The cut is never going to heal. The wound itself is becoming infected. You would have to take off all those band-aids and let the cut air out in order for healing to occur. But most of us tend to put band-aids on everything. When my daughter was younger, she would put band-aids all over her body because it was SpongeBob SquarePants, of course, and that was attractive for her. But how many of us have so many band-aids on that we refuse to take off and are unaware that we are wearing them? It is necessary to look within. It is not something you can avoid. Most people who practice that level of avoidance, of avoiding emotion or dealing with the emotions that an issue or incident may have prompted in them, they ultimately fail. They ultimately fizz out because you cannot put that much emotion into the dumping zone without it trickling out at some point. It's like filling up a garbage can and the garbage can overflows. I mean, where's that overflow going to go? It's going to come back to you, or it's going to come back to areas of your life when you least expect it. If you understand that emotions are distraction and that they're there to distract you from the true purpose, you will look at them differently. Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling is one thing. Holding on to that emotion is another. That's the distraction. How long are you going to let the emotion keep you moored to the feelings of guilt, to the feelings of inadequacy, to the feelings of pain? Emotions are supposed to be fluid. They're supposed to pass on. But what we as human beings do is we hold on to those emotions and we capitalize on them. We make them bigger than life themselves. And a lot of times the distraction is really the fact that we're using the emotion as an excuse. I recently counseled someone and they said, you know what? I don't trust women. What is he really saying? Is he really saying I don't trust women? Or is he really saying the emotion of pain is something that I refuse to release because I don't want to experience that pain again? That's exactly what he's saying. Identify the emotion. Therefore, you wouldn't allow it to distract you from moving forward in this life. The other thing about emotions is that they're symptoms, like I said. So they're there to tell you something is wrong. They're not necessarily there for you to embrace them and color them and hold on to them and nurse them. That's not what emotions are. Emotions are fluid. They move through. They pass through. Think about this. Is there anyone in your life that you loved at one point and you no longer love? You got through it, right? That was then, and you moved past it. The emotion you felt right there and then was so intense, but over time you learn how to deal with it. What I'm trying to say to you today is to process your emotions. Process them to the point where you do not allow them to distract you from the things in your life that you have to do. If you're distracted, then you're not going to go from point A to point B. And if you're distracted, you're more than likely open to some unseen force taking advantage of you. Pain, the emotion of pain, guilt, anger, and fear. Those things can really materialize to become boulders in your life, to become obstacles. So we're talking about a lot of different things here, and I'm throwing everything at you. I understand that. We're talking about emotions. We're talking about obstacles. We're talking about, processing. We're talking about letting go when you need to let go. It's not easy. It's not easy to look within. But we as people, we use other people as mirrors. Meaning that when you see someone else outside of your own environment, you respond to that person based on what you're internalizing. So the person gets a lot of the things that you haven't dealt with. If you are angry, you're not going to respond to that person in a good way. And then you yourself might not understand why you're angry. It's an emotion. Let it go. You are the builder and molder of yourself. You are the one that is responsible for pulling yourself up or breaking yourself down. I said that in my last video. control yourself. Is it easy? Or is there times when you're going to be out of control? Yeah. I am not perfect. There are times when I do things that I don't want to do and I say things that I shouldn't have said. But I learned one thing, a valuable lesson recently, that if I allowed myself to stay in that moment, if I allowed myself to stay with the guilt, if I allowed myself to stay with the emotion of pain, then it would transcend my very existence. I'm a human being, and being means existing. And I have power. And the power to let go of those things that would hold me back is within my control. I'm telling you the same thing. Check yourself. Do not let your emotions distract you this day from the things that you need to do for yourself. I'm Ingrid. If you like the videos, please subscribe as always and leave me your feedback. It's valuable and it'll help me grow. And if you want to know more, also send me, just write and I'll reach out to you. Thank you.